right, everybody. Hey, welcome to another video. I appreciate you clicking on the video. I've got 3 stories. This is a long video. One short story, one medium long story, and the last one is so crazy. You just won't believe it. And then at the end, we've got our normal birthday wishes that I do in these marathons. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get rolling. All right, here we go. Here's a story from Iowa. Hey Dixie, my name is Rod and I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. I want to start by saying I did not see a Bigfoot, but I think my dad may have. The encounter happened in the summer of 2000 on the Des Moines River. I was 11 or 12 years old. My father, his cousin, and me were night fishing for catfish. It was late or possibly early morning and we had taken the boat several miles up the river, shut off the motor, and were drifting back down with the current. When we got about a mile from the Birdland Marina, we started hearing some branches and sticks breaking on the bank like someone was walking alongside us. My dad and his cousin periodically checked the bank with their large spotlights, but they didn't see anything. After about 10 minutes, a small rock was thrown at us and it landed in the water 5 feet from the boat. It was dark out, but there was enough moonlight to see the ripples in the water. My dad could tell that I was getting scared and he told me that it was just a fish jumping so that I would quit asking him questions. I kept fishing and so did they, but we were all a little on edge. After a few minutes, we were greeted by a basketball-sized boulder being thrown at us. My dad and his cousin quickly started scanning the bank with their lights. I didn't get to see what he saw, but as fast as my dad dropped his light, he started the motor and we were moving. My father has flaws, but fear is not one of them. I know my dad believes in Bigfoot, and although he would never tell me so, I believe that is what he saw on the bank that night. It would be several years before I got interested in Bigfoot and would learn that rock throwing is one of their habits. I know this is not an exciting or action-packed story, but that's my story as I remember it almost 20 years ago. And he signs off Ron. Ron, that's a great story. What the heck are you talking about, man? I see these stories in my mind as I read them, and I can, when you're fishing, it's just pitch black dark. You can't see much at all. Usually people have a little small light in the boat so they can bait hooks and things like that. But you don't see what's going on around you. You don't even know how close to the bank you are. And to shine a light and illuminate a Bigfoot on the bank of a river after a basketball-sized rock landed by the boat beside you, holy crap, man. That's scary. I wonder if you ever discussed it with him afterwards. Is he still living? Do you guys talk about it? That would have been great to know in this story. But either way, man, it's an exciting story, a scary story, and I'm so glad you shared it with us. Thanks, Ron. This is another story from my friend Todd, who is, again, a collector of these cryptid stories. And this is as good as any of them he's ever sent me. Thanks, Todd, for sending this. Have you ever shopped at REI, Sportsman's Warehouse, Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, or a similar outdoor store? If so, take a moment and consider what it might be like to work at one of these stores and some of the strange stories you might hear from customers. In a way, it's actually a great place to engage people about their experiences, and if they ever encountered something strange or unusual while biking, boating, camping, hiking, or hunting. This story is about a 28-year-old man who walked into Bass Pro Shop's store in Central Florida. He was looking for a new compound bow for the upcoming elk season. While chatting with the store's employee about hunting locations, big game and such, the customer opened up and shared a traumatic story that he'd never shared with anyone during the 12 years since it happened. He only did so after the employee admitted that he believed in Bigfoot and actually saw one out west where he used to hunt. In fact, they've both been to and hunted similar areas. The man's story took place 12 years earlier, when he was just 16 years old and while hiking with a friend at the Philmont Boy Scout Ranch in New Mexico. Philmont currently covers 140,000 acres of wilderness near the southern end of the Rocky Mountains. And here's how the gentleman relayed the story. During our 2 weeks of hiking, we both put over 100 miles on our boots. We enjoyed the rugged terrain, the lush meadows, the thick forest, trout-filled streams, and hidden natural treasures. In fact, we were having a great time. That is, until we realized that we were lost. Imagine being 16 years old and lost within an area that large. It was crazy. The ranch's land covers more than 200 square miles and is full of all sorts of wild animals, namely black bear. To add perspective to their situation, in 1986, Philmont had 5 separate bear attacks on campers during a 2-week period. In 2000, 4 more campers reported being attacked. And most recently, in 2010, a 14-year-old boy was sleeping inside his tent when a bear climbed into the tent and bit the boy. There was even a version of this particular report that claimed the boy was dragged out of the tent by the butt. He'd gone to sleep with a candy bar in his back pocket, and that attracted the hungry bear. This man continued his story, saying, "During our second night of being lost, we had just finished making camp and had started a small fire. It was getting pretty cold at night, so we both wanted to warm up a bit at the fire before collecting more wood to get us through the night. That decision may have actually saved our lives. While sitting next to the fire and contemplating our situation, we both realized we weren't alone. There, standing quietly next to a tree at the edge of our campsite, was a massive, hairy creature. Where it came from and how long it had been watching us, we didn't know. We didn't hear or see it walk up. As we both sat frozen in fear, I remember being unable to rationalize a way out of our situation, and even thought that we were going to die and nobody knew where we were. Besides, if we could somehow escape, we didn't know which way to run or for how long. Heck, we were lost. This thing was just massive, and we were sitting on the ground at a distance too close for comfort. In a manner of speaking, we were sitting ducks." The store employee jumped in with a question. "What did you mean then that the decision to warm at the fire may have saved your lives?" And the storyteller said, "Can you imagine what might have happened if my friend and I had left the camp in different directions and into the darkness looking for firewood? What if the creature or creatures were out there waiting for us?" "I see what you mean," said the store attendant. "Yeah, that could have been really bad." His customer continued, "I'm not sure how long we sat there looking at it without making a sound or making a move. Likewise, it remained there motionless, but we could hear it breathing. It must have had huge lungs with the sound it made while breathing. I still can't get over how massive this thing was. I keep using the word massive as that's all I can think of to describe it." "So what happened?" said the store attendant. "How did you get away from it?" "After a while, it simply turned around and walked deeper into the forest. Neither of us slept a wink that night. The whole experience from our trip and everything we thoroughly enjoyed up to that point has been for the most part forgotten, or maybe replaced is a better word. The confusion and fear compounded with being lost so far from home made us want to repress what happened. In fact, my friend and I never talked about what happened or told anyone. Until now, I'm talking to you here." "Man, that's a crazy story. You obviously found your way back to civilization. How did you get back?" The storyteller continued. "At first light, we broke camp and headed for the nearest high point, and we started climbing. We found some landmarks which were on our map, and that led us back to the main buildings and the parking area. We were very happy, but also mentally and emotionally exhausted. Neither of us have returned to Philmont or New Mexico." "So where are you headed now with this new bow?" "I'm going on a solo hunt with a guide up in Idaho. I hear they have nice elk." "Is your friend going with you then?" "No, he doesn't hunt. Actually, he doesn't get out that much anymore. He's got a family and a demanding job to keep him busy." "Well, thanks for sharing your story, and I'm glad you guys made it out safely. I don't know what I would have done in the same situation. and best of luck on your hunt, too. This was an amazing story, but what you don't know is that the store employee has also been to the Philmont Boy Scout Ranch. What are the odds of that? Having a fellow hunter to confide in is great, but it's even easier when they've seen one of these creatures as well, and have even been to the location where you saw it. And then Todd goes on to write, all right, Cam, I know you've heard of the Philmont Scout Ranch too. You might not remember it, but it was mentioned in at least 2 of your earlier videos by people who had encounters there. I can't recall which videos, though. Over the years, I've met Forest Service rangers, rock climbers, and a handful of others who once worked at Philmont. I bet there are many, many other Philmont stories out there. Todd, thanks for writing that. And I agree, if there's anybody out there that's had any experiences at this Philmont Scout Ranch, man, send them to us. I read these stories, I go through them, and while I enjoy them individually, I'm not one of these photographic memory people or photogenic memory people. I have a hard time remembering, heck, what I ate this morning for breakfast. I'm just going through my day and having a good time. And so I have a hard time looking back and cataloging where a lot of these encounters happen, what happened, exactly what was the demeanor of the creature, et cetera, et cetera. So, but you guys listen, and if you see a pattern happening in a location or with a behavior or anything, man, send me an email and remind me, because that would help me kind of keep up and catalog these things. I guess I need a database or something like that. I just don't have time to do it. Okay, Todd, thanks for another great story. And buddy, I hope you keep sending them, because these are fantastic. Thank you so much. Here's a story from North Carolina, actually the North Carolina-Tennessee border. Let's see, close to the Cherokee National Forest, I believe. Yeah, Cherokee National Forest, or National Park. It's a spectacular story, and I've had it for about a year, and I've debated on whether to share this or not, because it is really fantastic. It's really, and when I say fantastic, I mean it's like out of this world. But I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. It took a lot of editing and a lot of work to get this done. Sit back, hold on to your weaves, because this one's going to rock your world. All right, here's what the writer says. He wants to stay anonymous. I had recently moved from Ireland to the United States, specifically the North Carolina-Tennessee border. I'm going to spare you a lot of the details because I would be writing for days. To protect my sister, her family, and home, I will keep her location vague, but it's basically sitting on a woodland and forest expanse that continues onto the Cherokee National Park. I will try to keep to the most significant encounters and how everything played out. It's hard to even know where to begin because so much has happened. I began to notice strange things a week or 2 after I arrived. I was settled into my new environment and in awe of everything around me. Ireland is a bubble compared to this place. It was early July, hot and humid, and there was a dead heat in the air. I was sitting on the back porch, laying on a swing, chatting with a friend over the phone. I felt like I was melting in this heat. I hung up the phone and gathered my thoughts before I went in that evening. I heard bangs coming from just inside the tree line, about half a football pitch distance away. It sounded like someone hitting a tree hard with the flat of a hurley or something harder. It was wood on wood, loud bangs as loud and sudden as gunshots. Startled and confused, I scanned the area, but I saw nothing. Strange, I thought, and I went back inside. Someone is back in the woods cutting timber or something, I told my sister. I'm hearing loud bangs from the woods. She looked confused and said there shouldn't be anyone on or near the property, even in the woods out back, especially not cutting timber. We walked outside and across the yard to the fence, and we listened for a few minutes. The noise had stopped, and we didn't see anyone. Shrugging our shoulders, we walked back into the house. My sister Amy and her husband Jay and my awesome little nephew Adam, their 4-year-old, had only been living on the property a little over 3 months at this stage, so everything was basically new to all of us. The sounds, the smells, the wildlife, and everything was so different from Ireland. I am a nature buff at heart. I enjoy fishing and hunting and everything outdoors, but the lands and the wildlife of the United States are vastly different from Ireland. Irish wildlife can't kill you, well, unless you're allergic to bees and get knocked down trying to outrun one. I had not heard of wood knocks, but now I know what they are. The sounds I heard that day were obviously my first encounter. Looking back, I don't know why I shrugged it off. I guess the new environment had a huge part to play in why I was so ignorant to the early signs of Sasquatch in the area. Our home was large and miles away from any other buildings or homes or developments. We sat nestled in the middle of nowhere. The area is beautiful and it took my breath away, and knowing what I know now, I understand how these creatures go unseen for so long. My sister bought her property, and from what I know, it was empty for 6 months before she moved there. As the days and weeks passed, I heard whistles, endless wood knocks. I heard movement in the forest, trees shaking, etc. It baffled all of us, but we explained it away as people hunting or bears and all sorts of things crossed our minds. There were days when all of us together, feeling brave, would investigate the surrounding woodlands. We never found anything, and I have to add we never felt in danger, but we were always cautious with Adam. We kept a close eye on him while we played outdoors. The Irish have twisted minds and a strange sense of humor, so the idea of being dragged into the forest by bears or eaten alive by flesh-eating possums was the common joke to my poor sister and the rest of us. We really didn't know what to make of the strange things happening that summer. However, in August, the realness of what was happening finally landed. I became aware of what was really in the forest surrounding this home. On a hot weekend in August, Adam and I went on an adventure to check out the area. Hunting for treasure, finding weird creatures, you know how it is with a 4-year-old boy. Everything is awesome and everything blows your mind. We crossed the fence line and we spent a couple of hours looking for critters and catching them in jars. We never strayed too far from our home because he didn't have the stamina at 4 years old. But to him, we were way out in the wilderness. My sister called and said that she had started the barbecue and for us to get home, so we headed that way. When I got off the phone, Adam was laughing and staring off into the distance. He was contorting his face into strange shapes like kids do. I had been sitting beside him on the log and I stood up after the phone rang. I walked around with my head down speaking with my sister, kicking dust and not paying attention, but I did notice him looking off into space in front of him, making silly faces and giggling. I paid it no mind and I finished the phone call and then stuffed my phone back into my front pocket. "What you laughing at, boy?" I asked Adam. His reply sent chills down my spine. "I'm making faces at the brown boy in the woods. He's making funny faces at me," he said with a giggle. I immediately bent down and picked him up into my arms and I cradled him. "What boy are you talking about?" I asked. Adam pointed to an area straight in front of the log that we had been sitting on and he said, "Right there. He has a funny face. Can't you see it?" I looked intently at the area that was thick with trees and undergrowth and I couldn't see through it. "I don't see him, Adam. Are you sure you saw a brown boy in the bushes?" Adam stared at the area and he didn't reply, a smile still on his little face. I stepped forward with him still in my arms and I looked closer at the scrub brush that made a sort of wall into the woods from this clearing where we stood. Everything suddenly got real quiet. I had not noticed the birds chirping and the other sounds from the woods until it all stopped. The silence was broken by grunts and huffs coming from my left. It sounded like monkeys or chimps, but the tone was too deep. I froze in place and I scanned the area with my eyes. I never moved. The chatter continued. I wanted to look closer. I wanted to go into the trees and see what was there, but an inner voice told me to stop. Time stood still. My heart picked up its rhythm, and soon it felt like it was pounding out of my chest. Everything was wrong about this whole situation. I knew it, felt it, and everything in me screamed for me to get this child out of there. I calmly and slowly backed up a few paces, and then I turned and headed for home at a normal pace. Running, in my opinion, would have been a bad mistake. Adam's chin rested on my shoulder, and he watched behind us as we walked. He shrieked with excitement and laughter, and he said, "There he is!" I stopped, and I turned around to look. There, crossing the clearing that we had just left, was a small creature about the same height as Adam. I caught sight of it as it exited the brush where Adam and I had stood only a few seconds before. It was a small, hairy, childlike creature, but it was much bigger and more broad than Adam. It walked a few paces and stopped, and it looked right at us. The distance was less than 20 meters. A loud hoot came from the area, a sound deeper than this creature could have made, and it snapped the thing out of its stare at us. It quickly walked across the clearing, over the log that we had sat on, and it vanished into the woods. Adam was now heavy in my arms, and I needed to move. I slung him onto my back, and I began a slow jog. "Hold on tight, mate. We're going for a jog," I said, and proceeded to the fence. 15 minutes later, I dumped the kid over the fence, and I told him to run to his mother. I never took my eyes off Adam until he was in his mother's arms. I then turned to look back over the fence. I was overwhelmed with the feeling that I was being watched. I turned back to the house, and Adam was sitting in his mother's lap. Sitting there was my sister, her husband, and some friends they had invited over, all gathered around the barbecue grill. I stood at the fence for a few minutes with the image of the brown boy running through my mind. I wanted to remember every detail. I needed to make sense of this. I'm only assuming that it was a male. The creature was covered with chestnut-colored hair 3 inches long. The facial skin was brown, and it looked leathery. Its head was wide and misshapen, and I remember its expression, like a perpetual smile was across its face, its white teeth showing all the time. Dark eyes were set deep in sockets with a heavy brow ridge. Long arms hung on a wide but lanky torso. Its legs should have been short, but they weren't, more proportioned like a human. Every inch of this creature was covered in lean muscle. I replayed the event over and over in my mind. The hoots from another location that got the creature's attention. The noises didn't come from the creature in front of us, meaning there must have been others close by. Maybe its parents trying to keep the child in line. I don't know. My hands still shook, and the adrenaline kept flowing in my veins. And the realization that I had just seen a Bigfoot finally hit me. I don't know why it took so long, but at that moment, I knew what Adam and I had encountered. Engrossed in these thoughts, I had lost my sense of time and where I was. Another wood knock from the forest broke my trance. My heart rate sped a little, and I looked back in the direction that we had just come. I was comforted by the fact that the noises were far in the distance, but the sound bothered me all the same. I hopped over the fence, and I ran to the barbecue grill, and I asked Amy to speak with me alone. I told her the whole story, and she believed that Adam and I had seen something, but she didn't agree that it was a Bigfoot. She didn't believe in Bigfoot. This was not the time or place to have an argument, so I dropped it, and I joined the others around the grill. Later that night, I recounted the story to Jay, and he believed me. He knew what we were dealing with on this property, but never actually said the words, fearing that he would scare his family and me. Amy didn't believe we were dealing with Bigfoot, but she would soon discover that she was wrong. In the days after the brown boy incident, Adam talked about nothing else, and any chance he got, he wanted to go to the trees and see if his new friend wanted to play. Looking back, I guess the move and the change of environment must have been hard on Adam. He was only 4, and the family had moved him away from his friends and everything else that he knew. I believe this is why he was so excited and even obsessed with this new brown boy that lived in the woods. No matter how hard we as a family tried to explain to him that the woods were dangerous and that no boy lived there, that only animals lived there, he would just laugh and say, "Yes, he does live there. I see him all the time." This usually gave me the shivers and goosebumps would follow. Watching him cry over not being allowed to see his friend was excruciating for me. His mother worried about him non-stop, but preschool would soon begin, and she thought this would fill the void of friendship in this little boy's life. A few days after the brown boy event, Adam, Amy, and I were all on the back deck. I was relaxing after a tough day at work. Around 7 p.m., I went inside to grab another bottle. Outside, it was still fairly bright and warm. I heard a loud bang and a shriek that would shatter glass, so I ran through the kitchen to the back deck and into the yard. There, I found Amy running towards the house, clutching Adam tight and screaming for me to get inside. She was as white as paper and shaking all over as she explained what had happened. Adam had made his way to the fence line to retrieve the ball that he and my sister were playing with when he saw a large dark shape ominously hiding just inside the tree line close to where Adam's ball had landed. She stood transfixed on the creature as it moved closer to Adam, at which point she sprang into action, running to get her child. The creature charged towards Adam, and they both reached Adam at the same time. Only the old wooden decaying fence acted as a barrier as she scooped Adam into her arms and stood still only a few feet from the beast. The creature, she said, stopped in its tracks and released a horrible yell while pounding its fists into the ground in a fit of rage. She gripped Adam tighter and pushed his head into her chest to shield him in some way from the beast. It licked its lips, and it let out a growl that she said felt like a burst from a loudspeaker. She felt physically sick and couldn't move. Her feet felt like concrete, and her insides felt like a liquid. The creature ripped a panel from the fence and flung the long, broken piece of wood at Amy, barely missing her face. A loud howl came from inside the forest. It was another Bigfoot. Quickly, the creature in front of her turned and crashed through the woods away from her and Adam, and in the opposite direction of the loud scream. Her feet felt light again, and she remembered how to run. Like a newborn deer, she clumsily hobbled towards the house with Adam held so tight that he had to ask her to stop and let go. He squirmed to break free from her embrace. She loosened her grip on her son, and she wiped his tears away. I heard Adam say between sobs, "I don't like that man." I helped them inside, and she collapsed to the floor. She gave me orders to lock the door, which I did before helping her off the floor. Amy quickly walked to the restroom to get cleaned up. She had wet herself in the yard. I don't like telling you this, but to understand how terrified she was, you need to know. The three of us sat huddled on the couch in silence. Amy's sobs and sniffles filled the room with the sadness and fear. Jay was not due back until morning, so it was up to me to keep them safe for now. But truth be told, I was terrified. Amy's description of the beast was just like the brown boy, only colossal and enormous in every aspect. I presumed this beast was the alpha, but I would soon learn that he was not. He was 10 feet tall at least and covered in dark red hair that was dirty and matted. Later she spoke of a dank odor that wasn't repulsive, but that if she smelled it again, she would know what it was. The eyes were darker than hell and full of rage, and there was a wound on its shoulder that she described as deep and painful looking. Blood matted the hair around it, and there was a lot of hair missing around the wound. "What the hell are those things?" she asked between sobs. I didn't reply. She needed to calm down for now. Something large hit and rolled down the roof. Before long, the home was showered with rocks and other debris. Amy screamed, and Adam became hysterical. It felt and sounded as if hundreds of objects were hitting the house, like a war zone. The pelting would cease, and roars and howls would replace the terror. The beast began circling the house, tearing exterior panels away. More rocks or tree limbs would hit the other side of the house. By this time, we had huddled in the hallway. There was nothing I could do. They would be inside the house any minute and kill us all. I felt defeated. The creatures seemed to be concentrated on the west side of the house at this point. We heard glass breaking, and then a door was kicked open. Here they came. It was over. I held the little family as tight as I could. A roar like nothing I had ever heard came from the east, and an eerie silence replaced the pandemonium. During the break, I ran to the living area for my phone. Maybe I had time to call for help. I approached the phone on the coffee table, which sat in front of a large window facing east. I could see a 10-foot-tall, massive Bigfoot tearing the front porch off the house. I snatched up the phone and I called 911, and then I called Jay. We lived a long way from town, and it took the police a while to get to us. At least it felt like a long time when it was probably only 20 minutes or so. But by the time they arrived, the creatures had stopped their assault and retreated into the forest. I won't go into my discussion with the officer, but they know about these things, and they urged us to leave for a couple of days and get a room in town. Jay arrived 30 minutes later. The police said there was nothing they could do at this point because nothing was happening, but that we should call them should we experience any further trouble, and they left. Soon it was dark and Jay didn't want us to leave. He said that he wasn't being run off his own property. Amy disagreed with the decision, but she soon gave up. That night, Jay, Amy, and Adam slept in their bedroom together. I slept on the sofa. A window was in the adjacent wall, and I could see outside. It was a dark night, and there was no moon. I couldn't see anything, but I knew something was watching me. I stayed awake as long as I could, but eventually dozed off from exhaustion. Later, I was awakened by a creak on what was left of the deck outside the window. I could hear faint footsteps. I sat straight up on the sofa and I stared out the window, fully expecting to see a monster staring back at me, but what I saw was more terrifying than that. There, on the edge of the deck, was a tiny figure in pajamas. Adam had slipped out of bed and somehow made it outside. He was jumping off the deck where the railing had been torn away and was walking towards the woods. By the time I got outside, he was gone into the shadows of the forest. I was hyperventilating and I couldn't yell for his parents. I think I ran towards the house, but running away from Adam didn't feel right. So I turned back towards the woods and I ran to the edge. I found my voice and I yelled his name. Darkness and crickets is all I got in return. They had taken my nephew. Tears rolled down my face as I stared into the blackness. Jay and Amy ran up beside me. By now, I was standing at the old fence. Jay jumped the fence and we both followed. He was using the torch app on his phone, frantically looking everywhere for his son. Amy took off into the woods with no light at all, and I caught up to her and tried to talk her down. She listened to me as I told her that I think that he only wandered off and that I would go out and find him. I asked her to go back to the house. She reluctantly agreed. Jay immediately said, "Let's go." Jay and I started walking in the blackness with this piece of junk for light. Every sound we heard sent us through the roof with fear. On a peaceful walk in the woods at night, it can be a bit spooky. We knew what was out there. Imagine our fear. We followed the trail that Adam and I had taken when we first saw the brown boy. On we went, jumping at every sound that we heard, even our own footfalls. And then we heard Adam giggle. He was near, and we began to scream his name. We were now close to the clearing where Adam and I had seen the first creature. Jay was on my right with the torch, and we slowly moved into the clearing. I got that feeling that someone was behind me on my left. I consciously evaluated the situation. I knew that I was in a fight or flight mode. I was going to do one or the other, and I chose to fight. It might mean instant death for me, but maybe it would give Adam time to get away and run to his father. There was movement behind a large tree to my left. I got ready for the attack when Adam, like a kid leaving a party, strolled out walking towards me. He was walking right at me. He saw me, and he was coming to his uncle and his father. We moved towards him, his father passing me and grabbing Adam up. Jay had dropped his light, and I reached down to gather it and then shine the torch on Jay and his son. Only 10 feet on the other side of the boys was Brown Boy, looking sullen and upset. That is the only way to describe the look on this hideous creature's face. He was holding onto a tree trunk with both arms. Jay looked at me and he said, "Let's get back to the house now," and away they both went. I stood there for a minute looking at Brown Boy. I didn't feel any aggression from him, and I was more transfixed by his appearance for a minute as Jay and Adam made their way back to the house. That's when I discovered that that tree trunk that he was holding on to was not a tree trunk. It was a hair-covered leg. It was so big that in my mind it had to have been a tree trunk. I raised my eyes up the leg and up the body, and I could make out the right side of its body. The other half was slightly hidden behind a tree, but not hidden well. I was less than 10 feet from these creatures with my light shining right on them. From its anatomy, I could see that it was a female. She was between 8 and 9 feet tall and built like a machine. Her hand came down to Brown Boy and held him to her leg. She made a few subtle grunts, and Brown Boy seemed to relax. The terror that had filled my day suddenly left me. I was watching a nurturing mother scold her child in a soft way for causing all this trouble. I never took my eyes off this magnificent creature the entire time they stood in front of me. She had a wound on her face that was bleeding. It was a gash under her left eye, and she blinked several times as if it bothered her. She stepped out from behind the tree, and I saw her whole shape. I was astonished to see a large, round belly. I think she was pregnant. She turned with Brown Boy, and they walked slowly into the darkness, and I saw them no more that night. With Jay's phone in hand, I walked back to the house. Something followed me in the forest until I reached the fence and climbed over. I could hear it, and I got a bit scared on the way back, but nothing happened, and I walked into the yard. Amy was on the deck holding Adam. I hugged them both. She told me the police were on their way, and when they showed up, I spoke with them and explained what had happened, but I left out the sighting. I just said that we found him and everything was okay. It's hard to explain how calm I was. I should have been talking like a madman, but I suppose I was in shock, or I was genuinely calm from the encounter. I'll never understand it. One of the policemen was the man I had spoken with earlier. Again, he said there was nothing they could do and suggested that we build a higher fence, put up some security cameras, and keep a better eye on Adam. And then they left. But there was something about the way the cop spoke to me that inferred that this was not the first he had heard of this sort of thing in the area. Soon the house was repaired, the fence was replaced, the doors were always locked with keys, and security cameras covered the house along with the woods beyond the fence. It only took us a week to get everything done. Throughout the week, Jay and I talked about what I had seen after he and Adam had left the clearing. I described the female in detail. I explained further that I felt like the female and Brown Boy were not a threat to the family. I can't explain it, but I just knew it. And then Jay agreed with me. Upon inspection, we found that the damage to the house was not as bad as we had thought. We replaced a few siding panels and painted the whole house so that we wouldn't have to match the colors. The deck took a bit of lumber and work, but in 2 days it was as good as new. Even though it seemed like there were a lot of Bigfoot attacking the house, it's my guess that only one attacked. It was the beast Amy encountered at the fence with Adam. She clearly saw its shoulder wound, and I believe it was a male that had wandered into the territory and was fighting for dominance. All this is speculation, of course, but it makes sense to me. We have not had any incidents like that again. I think that male has moved on. Amy was a wreck for the next few weeks. She kept Adam in her sight at all times. He was never allowed to play outside without an adult with him. The weeks have passed and she is more at ease living here. Immediately after the attack on the house, she wanted to move. Jay made it clear that they had everything they owned tied up in this property. There was no place for them to go unless they could sell the property quickly. She agreed to stay a while with the qualification that if one more thing happened, that they were going to leave. Damn the money, she would live in their car before she would deal with this kind of event again. Fortunately, things have worked out. I have moved and I live in a larger town in North Carolina now, but I visit my sister and her family often. Once while staying with them over a weekend, we saw Brown Boy and his mother. There's an infant she carries with her now. Amy says she is accompanied with a smaller female, maybe 6 feet in height, but I didn't see this female on this occasion. Adam has been given more freedom to move around the yard without an adult. And I talked to Adam about Brown Boy and I asked if he sees him often. Of course I do, he said to me. I see him a lot. Later that afternoon, I watched from the house as Adam ran out to the fence. He pulled something from his pocket, laid it on the second rung, and then sprinted back to the house and into his room. Quietly, I walked down the hall and pushed the door open just an inch and looked in on Adam. He lay on his bed watching out the window. I walked in and I laid beside him and we both watched the fence. What did you do at that fence, Adam? I leave Brown Boy gummies whenever I can get some. He really likes them. And then I come back here and I watch him take them. Not long after, we both saw a hair-covered hand reach onto the fence and rake the gummies off. And then it was gone. And that's the end of the story. I told you guys that was a fantastic story. Woo! What a story. Man, I loved it. I don't claim these stories are true or not. I just love them. I just love them from top to bottom, every single one of them. And I want to extend my thanks to this writer for sending such a good story. Actually, I kind of hope this one is true because I would love to think that this mama Bigfoot is out there reproducing and repopulating the area with good, nice Bigfoots. And I guess that bag Bigfoot is just like anything in the animal kingdom. Males are always fighting for dominance and breeding rights and things like that. And maybe that's all it was. It's just a shame he came after that house. At any rate, this was a great story, and thank you to the writer. I really enjoyed it, and I think everybody else did too. Now let's go to some birthday wishes. All right, birthday time. Got a few here. Let me get my sheets of paper out. I got all these notes, birthday notes. Lynn Rakovic wants to wish her friend Pam a happy belated 60th birthday. In addition, she wants to wish Pam and her husband Tim a belated happy 40th anniversary. Lynn, are you always late on all these birthdays and anniversary wishes? Doesn't matter, but she says they deserve the best. I can't get on to Lynn too bad because I can't even remember how old I am. My birthday was a while back and I couldn't remember how old I was turning. I'm 58 and I can never remember my phone number. I don't ever call myself. I always have to look it up. So Pam and Tim, happy birthday and happy anniversary from Lynn. Let's see here. Mike Williams wants to say happy birthday to his granddaughter, Brianna. Brianna's going to be 20 years old on September the 15th. Mike says she's a very special person and a friend, as well as my granddaughter. When she was only 3 weeks old, I had to try my hand at fatherhood once again. That's when I thought I was too old to do so, but I must have done a pretty good job because she is just awesome. I just wanted you to understand my feelings for her. Thank you and have a great day. Mike, I just kind of read your email. Man, that is awesome. Taking on a little girl at 3 weeks old that's your granddaughter and raising her to adulthood. What a stud you are. Oh man, I'd love to shake your hand. And Brianna, you got a good grandfather. He loves you. He didn't think he could do it, but apparently he did a good job. Happy birthday, Brianna, 20 years old on September the 15th. Let's see, who else we got here? Kelly Windridge says happy birthday to her husband, Steve. Steve turned 42 on August the 24th. Kelly and Steve live in the UK, in England. Isn't that awesome? That is so cool. She says they enjoy the videos very much. Kelly, you sent this from Steve's email address. Are you sure this is going to be a surprise? I looked at it and I started reading the email and I got a little confused, but then I figured it out. Thanks, Kelly and Steve, for watching from way over there in England. I appreciate you so much. Richard Hutchings wants to wish happy birthday to himself. He's going to be 73 on September the 12th. Happy birthday, Richard. Give yourself a big hug for your birthday. Richard's a retired Air Force man who drove over-the-road rigs for 30 years after he got out of the Air Force. Now he's retired and he lives in Florida with his wife. And their 40th anniversary is on September the 17th. Happy anniversary, guys, and enjoy your retirement. Florida, if I ever move, that's where I want to be, right on the coast, down there in the panhandle of Florida. I love the Gulf Coast. All right, let's flip the page here. Linda Diaz says happy birthday to her husband, Kiki Soria. I think I pronounced that right, but I probably didn't. He's going to be 48 on September the 14th. They've been married for 29 years, and they have 3 beautiful grandchildren. Linda says, Kiki, you are the love of my life, and I love you very much. Whoa, I think she likes this guy. They enjoy the videos, and they seem to be a very nice couple, just loving life, just having a good time, happy people. Happy birthday, Kiki. Linda loves you, man. Then we have Kelly Hatchcock. She wishes her husband, Hank, happy birthday. Hank's birthday is on September the 1st, or it was on September the 1st. I don't know how old Hank is, but he's got a good woman who loves him to send out a birthday greeting like this. Thanks, Hank and Kelly, for watching the videos. I appreciate you both. Beth Drawbond, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's anyway, wishes her mother, Carol, a happy 84th birthday on September the 21st. Miss Carol is from West Virginia, and Beth says, Mom, I know your life has not been easy, but you've always been there for me. I never once questioned how much you love me. You are such a kind and generous person. You, Mom, are a rare find, and I love you. I gotta wipe a tear from my eye on that one. Oh, wasn't that sweet? Man, the love between a mother and a daughter and a mother is, especially when it's a good mother, it's always good. It's always good. I saw it with my wife and her mother, and I just love seeing them interact. And Miss Carol, I hope you have the best birthday that you've ever had, and I hope your 85th year is fantastic. Beth, you're so sweet to do this for your mom. Happy birthday, Miss Carol. And last, we have Francis Mayfield. Francis, are you out there? You out there? There you are. Your husband, Tom, says that you are the love of his life. Francis's birthday is on September the 4th. I'm recording this on September 3rd, so that's tomorrow. That's a good man right there, Francis. You better hang on to that guy. Francis, I hope September 4th is a great day for you. All the best from the Dixiecryptid crew. That's me and my 5 dogs, and they're all looking at me right now, and if I understood dog language, I think they're saying, happy birthday, Miss Francis. All right, that's all the birthday wishes. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll come back for the next one. I'll have another one up soon. I got a bunch of interviews coming up, bunch of them. I got 5 recorded right now. I just need to get them through the editing process and get them posted. But until then, you guys have a great week, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.